Hi, my name is April Montgomery, and this is my story. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, in a community called Frazier. It was I was the minority. It was a prominently African-American community. I grew up pretty rough. My dad was a severe alcoholic. There was a lot of fighting in my home. That me and my mother physically fought quite often at a young age. That continued my whole life. There was a lot of just negative things that happened. One of the most traumatic things was when I was about 8, a neighborhood boy, he was a few years older than me, tried to rape me. And I fought him off. I learned to be a fighter really early on, but that come with some internal scars. And I tell you this because it makes sense later on why I made some choices that I made and why, how great God did some things. We ended up moving to Kentucky in 1997. And that was a complete culture shock. I go from inner city Memphis, Frazier community to Marshall County, South Marshall County. And it was a culture shock, and I immediately fell into, what you would call the wrong crowd. And ultimately, looking back on it, I had a search for love. I wanted to be loved and accepted, and I looked for that any way I could find it. I looked for it in my peer group. I looked, and that drove me into a lifestyle of drugs. I was arrested when I was 14 for a robbery that I had committed. We ended up going to Hickman County Juvenile Detention for 8 months, and then to a halfway house for another 6 months, and then was on probation for about a year after that. Again, looking for acceptance and community and love. And so after I got out of the halfway house, I had gotten my GED while I was there. The part of the probation was I had to get a job. So I tried working at McDonald's, and I did not do good with the public. God had not began to work on my temper and my people skills at that time. And so that didn't work. So I ended up going to work at the old Marshall County Hospital before they built the new one in the dietary department. And by this time I'm about 16, and I was working there, and there was a gentleman in maintenance who was on work release, and he would come over and he would do the dishes. Well, his son would come visit him. And again, my home lifestyle didn't get any better. I'm trying to work. I worked the 11 to the 7 shift, which was ideal because I could sleep late and still get off pretty decent time. But I was getting ready to go to bed one night, and my dad was drinking. He loves to turn his stereo up really, really loud when he was drinking, and I was trying to go to sleep, and I was ended up calling a friend of mine and talking to him on the phone, and was telling him what was going on. And I just got so mad. I went in there to my dad and was like, I'm going to smash this with a baseball bat if you don't cut it down. Well, while I was on the phone, he pulled out a 38 and shot at me. I was probably about 6 feet from him, shot at the ground, shot at my feet. And my friend calls 911, and I call 911, and my dad gets on the phone because there's 2 phones, and he's like, hey, I was just trying to scare her. And that led into a big divide between my parents and myself. I ended up having to go live with a friend and her mom, because there was a restraining order against the two of us, and my mom wanted him to stay in the house, and it was easier for me to go somewhere else. So that caused a lot of trust issues. The people who were supposed to love and protect me did not. And so I'm working at the hospital, and I continue working, and you know, things are just bad. But the guy who's working in maintenance on work release, his son comes and visits him, like I said. And we end up talking, and he's a really nice guy. He's not my type at all. He wasn't, like at that time, I was really lost and looking for love in all the wrong places, if you know, to be a cliche. But we become friends, and we would talk, and he had a motorcycle, and I thought that was kind of cool. And I ended up leaving the hospital and moving with some friends to Murray. Now, like I had said, I had gotten into drugs, and I had a family member that lived in a different county that had started like manufacturing meth. And so when I moved to Murray, I become part of that. And the people I lived with and the people that she worked with kind of like got together, and there was a lot of drugs, and I just thought I was the best thing in the whole world, because I was 17 years old, living on my own, living in Murray. I've got drugs and people and money, and still the whole time miserable. Still didn't feel accepted, still didn't feel loved, still searching. I thought that, you know, money would make me happy. It didn't. I thought the drugs would make me happy. It didn't. I thought being super skinny would make me happy. It didn't. I thought, you know, relationships, regardless of who or what they were, would make me happy. Gender didn't matter. Just, I just wanted to be happy. I wanted to be accepted and be loved. Well, coincidentally, the mom of the girl I was living with started dating the guy that was on work release. So one day, out of the blue, his son showed up in Murray, and I was like, hey, you know, before we had never really, there was no interest there at all. And he just kind of, he's like, hey, do you want to go for a ride? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And so he come back later with a friend, and me and another friend went on a bike ride on his motorcycle with him. And that started this thing. We, going into it, we had no intentions of dating, or we just wanted to be together, you know, and just hang out. And I remember we started, that was May, yeah. And by June, it was my birthday, and I had been doing a lot of drugs. Well, I remember spending my 18th birthday in his duplex on the kitchen floor sick, because he wouldn't take me back to Murray to get more drugs. And about 2 o'clock that morning, he's like, hey, I can take you to Murray, or, you know, I've got to get up and be at work at 6 o'clock, or we can just go down the road and we can go home. And and for some reason, when he said go home, it struck a nerve. So I was like, well, okay, you know, let's just go home. Well, that was June of 2001. By October of 2001, I was married to my current husband, and that would be Joe. And he, at the time, was getting his CDL license, and he took me over the road truck driving with him for the first year of his career, which did a lot. Like it put us together in this little bitty truck, like a semi truck. If you've ever been one, it's a twin bunk. But we would sleep on one bunk, and we went over the road. And what that did was the community that I was in no longer wanted to have anything to do with me, because I just pretty much disappeared. Like, he took me, and we went all over the United States driving a flatbed truck, and he taught me how to drive a semi, and he did a lot for me. Well, then, you know, if you remember the backstory, I'm constantly looking for love and acceptance. So I thought getting married, you know, I married someone who was completely opposite of me and was completely not my type. And I thought that, okay, this will do it. I'll feel love and I'll feel accepted and this will do it. No, it didn't. So then I was like, okay, maybe, you know, I'm married, I'm young, you know, I got married 5 months after I turned 18. Maybe, you know, if I have a baby. Okay, so then, you know, started trying to have a baby. Took 3 years, and I had my daughter, Jada. Now, going into this, I have been, you know, Joe had a daughter from a previous relationship, and so she's been in my life since she was 18 months old. I've since adopted her, and that's my oldest daughter, Olivia. So I had a child, but I thought if I had my own baby, like if, at the time, it was different, like if I could give birth, that would fill the hole that I was feeling, that need of acceptance and love. So we tried and tried and tried 3 years, and I got pregnant with Jada, and I thought, okay, this is it. Now I'll feel love and I'll feel completed. And after a couple years, that didn't go. So then I have a child, and maybe it's money, you know. So Joe was working at a job, and I pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, you know, more overtime, more money, and tried to live the lifestyle of the rich and famous, you know, lots of vacations, lots of nice clothes, lots of nice things, nice cars. And that still, I had this nagging in my heart that I still wasn't happy. I still didn't feel love. So maybe if I have another child. And so we go and we're trying, we can't, and they tell us that I have a condition called PCOS, and they're like, be happy that you even had one child naturally. You know, it's unheard of. And so that was kind of devastating. Well, growing up, I never heard Jesus. I was in my late 20s. It was 2008 before I heard about Jesus. And I did so. My husband grew up in and out of Christian fellowship. His grandmother took him to church, and his grandfather took him to church. And his dad's father got real sick. And Joe went to visit him at the hospital, and he said, you need to get your family in church. And that struck a nerve in Joe. So he's like, we're going to go to church. And they were going to this small little country church out in Jonathan Creek area. So I was like, I've never done church. I played in and out of church when I was a kid, like just for fun, but never sat in the sermon or never listened. I just went for the fun activities and acted like a heathen. So I was like, yeah, we'll go. We've got our 2 kids, and it'd be good for them. So we go to this little church, and it was everything that I was not expecting. And it bothered me when they would talk about the Bible that I didn't know what they were talking about. And so at home, to be prepared for conversations or what the preacher was preaching about, I would read the Bible, and I read it like a textbook. I didn't read it like it was the Bible or anything. I just read it like a textbook, so I knew the contents of what they were talking about. And so in doing so, just reading it, one day I was sitting on my couch, and the kid, I don't remember where. I think the kids was in bed, and I think Joe was outside working or something. But I remember, sitting on my couch and reading this, and it struck me. This is real. This is real. This person really loves me. Not for who I am or what I have or what I could do. This person, this Christ, this Jesus is for real. He really loves me. And I just right there, that was my salvation moment. It wasn't a church service. It wasn't someone leading me to the Lord. It was just a revelation sitting in my living room that Christ loved me and that everything that I was reading was true. And I remember praying, I said, okay, if this is for real, if you are all of this, if you are who you say you are, I'm in. You know, don't let me, and my language is a whole lot more colorful then. I said, but God, I said, don't let me get to the point that I find out that I have followed you or what I believed was you for all these years, and I am, you know, getting some weird mess. And so I was like, okay. So then during this time, you know, we got married in 2001 and this is now 2008. I had done a lot of things in my marriage. I'd stepped out of my marriage thinking that this would make me happy, you know, that Joe wasn't the person that would make me happy. You know, I got married too young. Maybe I need to, you know, maybe a romance with this person would make me happy, or maybe a romance with this person would make me happy. So I remember getting saved in my living room, me and God, and a week later I had been really praying about it, and I remember sitting, you know, calling Joe into the living room and saying, hey, I need to tell you some things. I told him everything, and I had peace. I, you know, told him, I said, I don't want any child support. I don't want to hurt you. I just want to start, you know, fresh. I told him about my salvation moments, and I said, I feel different. I can't explain it. I just feel different. And I said, and I feel like I need to tell you these things. And he said, and he shook his head and he didn't say anything. And he got up and went to the bedroom, and I just knew, I was like, he's packing his stuff, he's gonna leave. But overwhelmingly, I had peace. I was okay with it. And he come back out and he said, I believe you. I believe you're a different person. And he said, I'm not gonna go anywhere. He's like, just don't do it again. And I was like, okay. And that was the beginning of our marriage in 2008. And God really did a work, and it took a lot of time and patience and a lot of healing. But God was faithful, and he was there in the midst of our marriage. And here we are. This is 2021. We'll be celebrating our 20th year of marriage this year. God has since healed me of the PCOS and gave me 2 beautiful more children, Thomas and Savannah. He has healed our marriage. You know, he's my person. He calms me, he knows me, and he knows all the deep, dark, dirty things, and God has healed him from the hurt and given him a new look, and we have a new marriage. Once we were able to put all that out and focus on the Lord, and both of us together walk towards him, God has completely healed our marriage. And we got married in 2001, but it began in 2008 when we both could start serving the Lord. And it's been amazing to look back and see all the goodness of God and what he's done in our marriage. We've had financial difficulties. You know, that job that Joe was working right after I got saved, he lost. And that was one of the best things that could have ever happened, because now he's home. He's on unemployment, and this is, you know, 2008, so it was different from the current circumstances, but we were able to focus together. We were able to be together and study together and read together and really spend that time focusing on the Lord together. And it really drew us close as a couple, and just reading the word. And the hardships came. We ended up, like I said, he lost that job, but God was faithful through that. We've seen so many provisions of the Lord in that time that there was no other way to explain it other than God. and he gave us such knowledge as a couple of finances. And like I said, he gave me a medical healing of my body. We really prayed, and Joe wanted a son, and he gave us a son, and he blessed us with Savannah on top of it, because God's blessings are abundantly above what we could ask. And we were just happy with one, and he gave us two. And he has just been so good. And we ended up leaving our former church. There was a lot of hurt there, and God brought us to Christian Fellowship. And I remember Brother Rick giving one of the best things he's ever said to me: God didn't make you original for you to die a copy. And I always felt the odd woman out. And Joe he understood that, and he was there to support me in leaving that church. And coming to Christian Fellowship brought another healing to our marriage, because leaving that church meant he left his family church. It's where his grandparents went to church, his aunts and uncles went to church. And it brought another healing in our marriage coming to Christian Fellowship. We were able to come under Richie and Jenny, and they were able to nurse our wounds and help us. And we got to come under some great mentors. Ronnie and Rossi Etheridge have done amazing work with us. It's great to see God's touch throughout our marriage, bringing people into our lives that have helped mentor us as a couple, and has grown us even furthermore as a couple. And it's just been a true blessing looking back on all the things that has happened in our marriage that God has used, that we are able to share with other people. And it just, every time we share what God has done in our marriage, it strengthens us, because we look back and see the goodness of God. And I would like to really encourage any married couple to really add that threefold cord. It is not something just to say. When you really do as a couple come together and focus on Christ, it does something in your marriage. It really brings you both closer together as you're in pursuit of Him. And I'm so incredibly thankful for everything that God has done. So, like I said, my name is April Montgomery, and this is my story.